Welcome to this R&D Research and Development panel. Today we invite two very prominent funding agencies. The one is European Research Council, and the other is National Research Foundation of Korea. On behalf of local organizing committee of ICM, I'm very grateful to both agencies for coming to this panel. And both agencies, ERC and NRF, both covers not only science and technology, but also humanities and social science. This is panel, but somehow more introductory to the programs, current programs of both ERC and NRF. Okay, so let me introduce the president of NRF, the Research Foundation of Korea, National Research Foundation of Korea, Professor Min-gun Chung. He will give a welcoming speech. Yeah. Please.
Honorable Professor Jean-Pierre Bourguignon, President of ERC, Professor JongHae, President of KIAS, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of National Research Foundation of Korea, it is my great pleasure to deliver this welcome speech for the R&D policy session of 2014 International Congress of Mathematicians. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the organizing committee members of Seoul ICM 2014 and International Mathematical Union for all of their efforts into organizing the Congress, as well as speakers and all the participants. The Seoul ICM 2014 is very significant since it provides opportunities not only for mathematicians, but for next generation of the discipline from more than 120 countries around the world to get together to create and share new ideas about mathematics and build networks. Even though many future breakthroughs in science and technology will come from various disciplines, constant effort should be given to mathematics, as it is one of the fundamental fields of study that makes the advancement possible. The main theme of Seoul ICM 2014 is Dreams and Hopes for Late Starters. It was initiated by the Korean mathematical community to continue the collaborative effort to spread the benefits of mathematical education and discourse to developing countries. The key word of ICM 2014, knowledge sharing and dissemination of research outcomes, is in line with the major plans of NRF's basic research programs for 2014. The core policy directions of NRF's basic research programs for 2014 is to actively disclose the information relevant to researchers and to strengthen communication with researchers and to reinforce utilization of excellent basic research outcomes. On the basis of these implementation plans, the NRF will strengthen support for mid-career researchers who are the main producers of excellent basic research outcomes, and support for creative and challenging projects by young researchers. In addition, we are considering to establish an R&D virtuous cycle to have the research outcomes verified and support the follow-up projects. Both Ministry of Science, ICT, and Future Planning and Ministry of Education have declared 2014 as the Korean Mathematical Year to commemorate Seoul ICM 2014. I expect that Seoul ICM 2014 will be an important opportunity for Korea to leap forward to an advanced country in mathematics globally and to attract much attention to mathematics, not only to secure more funds, but also to foster young mathematicians nationally. I also anticipate that these R&D policy sessions will be very successful and every participant will gain fruitful results. In closing, I wish every participant here all the best, and especially for our foreign guests, a very safe journey back home with fond memories of Korea. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Chung. Well, President Chung has been a professor of industrial engineering, which is quite like a cousin of mathematics, at POSTECH, Pohang University of Science and Technology, before he took over the administration of NRF. Let's thank him again, please. Next, President of ERC, Professor Jean-Pierre Bourguignon, will give a welcoming speech.
Dear President Chung Keun, dear JongHae, very distinguished colleagues and friends, it's really a great pleasure for me to be here to present ERC in the context of the ICM 2014. I'm very pleased that the organizers took the initiative of having a section on funding of R&D. This is an issue which sometimes for mathematicians is something that they don't really appreciate very much, how the various agencies are organized and how they can take advantage of them. Some of them are well established, have been established for a long time, but some others are more recent. So this is the case of ERC, and we will take advantage of this session to present how ERC is organized and what is the presence of mathematicians. And I'm very grateful to some of the ERC grantees to have accepted to give a brief testimony on how they have been supported by ERC. There's another issue I want to bring in this very welcome speech, which is also the fact that ERC is very eager, first of all, to host among its grantees people coming from all over the world. The structure of ERC allows it indeed that the people receiving funds don't have to be permanently in Europe. They can be in Europe at least 50% of their time, which means they can really, if of course the institutions allow, share their time between their institution and some European institutions. But we have also other ways of cooperating, and actually Korea is giving a very good example. At the moment, we have already signed agreement with the American NSF and also with the Korean National Research Fund to allow researchers from these institutions or supported by these institutions to be part of some of the teams of ERC grantees. And this is done in a way which is very simple that we will explain later. So in a sense, having the opportunity to address you here in Seoul on the occasion of the International Congress of Mathematicians is actually a very good opportunity to make these possibilities better known. I hope we will have other countries who will also sign with the ERC agreements. We're already in discussion with some of them, but I want to underline how efficient the Korean agency has been to really implement the agreement, because immediately after the next year of signing, we already have some Korean scientists who will be visiting Europe and taking part in some ERC grants. And actually, I met some of the grantees who are going to come to Europe on Monday, and they are really, what was very interesting was the variety of domains in which they will be cooperating with European teams. One of them was a mathematician, and I hope there will be more mathematicians to come and participate in some of the teams. So again, thank you to the organizers for setting this up, and thank you very much to the NRF for all their very efficient support of the cooperation agreement. And I'm looking forward to a very fruitful and long-term cooperation in this context with the NRF and hopefully with also other agencies. Thank you very much.
You pull up the files.
Maybe it's this thing.
Oh, yeah, this is for the controlling forward, back.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to start with the presentation of ERC, and I will share it with Luiz Alves dos Santos, who is one of our scientific officers, and later on you will have the testimonies I promised you. So I'm going to cover what we call ERC basics, and Luiz is going to cover in more detail the funding schemes and opportunities, and then we'll have the testimonies. So ERC basics. So the idea was really to have, and that was a long struggle, but we managed to get it, we meaning the scientific community, to have an autonomous pan-European funding body, which was created in 2007, and which is led by scientists. That was the first time in the context of European Commission that scientists were given the responsibility of running a program. And the mandate was very clear. It was to encourage the highest quality research in Europe through competitive funding and frontier sub-projects. So it's a part of the EU framework programs for research and innovation. And the present framework program is called Horizon 2020 and covers the period 2014-2020. This means that this program is more or less fixed for the coming 7 years. So with the privilege that we know our budget for the coming 7 years. So as I mentioned, it's really a program which is very simple in its organization. This is a strict bottom-up approach, which is individual-based, which means the people who apply are principal investigators, but they must be working in the European Union, that is one of the member states, or an associated state. And again, as I said, it covers all fields of science, including social sciences and humanities. And the role of the Scientific Council is really to decide how to spend the money, but also extremely important in the context of ERC is that it is also responsible for choosing the people who are doing the evaluation. So it is our responsibility to determine the panel members. All the work, practical work, is done by an agency which is attached to the European Commission called the ERC Executive Agency. And again, that was really the wish of the scientific community. The only criterion for choosing the project is the quality of the research. And because it is really a very competitive program, then it's really actually supporting excellent research. So the three partners, in a sense, are the European Commission, which set up provides the financing, really covers all the legal aspects. The ERC Scientific Council, I describe its responsibility. It consists of 22 members. It's appointed by the Commission, and the ERC Executive Agency, as I said, is really managing the whole thing practically. So there are really 4 programs which are really run by the ERC. The 3 major ones, they are really the ones corresponding to 2 to 7 years after PhD, and consolidated grants. So these are the starting grants. The consolidated grants are for 7 to 12 years after PhD. And of course, the amount of money that you can request, you're not forced to request that amount of money, of course, but there is a ceiling, which is 2.75 million euro for 5 years. When the starting grants, the ceiling is up to 2 million euro. And the advanced grants are with no limitations of time to PhD, but you can request more money, but you have to be more advanced in career. And then there is another much smaller program called Proof of Concept, which accompanies researchers if they found along the way of their research really some possibility of developing something which could be closer to market, could lead to industrial applications or to service application. So the key point is that the ERC offers independence, recognition, and visibility, and because people have the full choice. The critical point is the autonomy of 5 years is of course very important because it allows you to have a very ambitious project. Because the money is substantial and because it's part of the regulation, the host institution has to really give the best conditions of work to the researchers. In particular, the researchers have the full responsibility of choosing their collaborators in their teams. And another thing which is also very significant is that the host, the principal investigator can actually change the host during the contract, and that's what we call portability of grant. And actually, ERC has become really a quality label, and really that's really why I think it's taking really a good part in helping Europe to really remain competitive for research. Basically, typically basic research, but also some applied research is funded. We don't make a distinction, that's why we call it frontier research. The balance presently is more towards basic research, but definitely applied project or even technological project are not excluded. Now the number of grants which have been given so far is 4,300. And as you will see later, basically 2/3 are given to younger people. Many nationalities are represented, which means that what I told you about the possibility for a non-European to take advantage of a grant really exists. Most of the time because these non-Europeans are actually established in a European institution, but not always. Success rate is about 10%. The number of institutions covered is about 600. But still we must make the remark that there is a concentration of the grants in 50 institutions, representing more or less 50% of the grants. The management, we hope, is really efficient and fast. And as I said, it's already highly recognized. So I show here the age distribution of people who have benefited from these grants, which shows really that the younger people have really been favored. That's by principle, because as I told you, 2/3 of the money goes to the 2 first categories, namely the starting grants and the consolidator grants. Also, just to show you from where are coming the people from non-ERA nationalities, with a big domination of people coming from the US, at least US citizens. And also another component I want to stress is the fact that really ERC participates in training, developing a new generation of researchers. Because I spoke about the principle of instigators, but of course these people are not working alone, and the amount of money they receive, a large portion of it is used to hire people to work with them, either as doctoral students or as postdoctoral students. There could be also other kinds. So here you see how this is represented in terms of categories. The larger the categories among the postdocs, next category is for PhD students. Then you have various other categories, including staff and so on. And for each category, I've also stressed what is the percentage of non-EU people working in the teams. So this is a sample taken out of 1,000 of projects. So actually altogether, since we have more than 4,000 projects, you should count the number of team members, multiply by 4. So more or less it's more than 25,000 people. Just to take an example, in terms, if you look at one country like China, which is a large country, the number of Chinese who hold a grant is not so large, it's about 8 people, but the number of Chinese who are participating in teams is like 500. So it's a very large number. Okay, so in the new program, which is Horizon 2020, which is now the one effectively functioning, the essential features of the previous one are maintained, so I don't want to cover it again. The total amount of money which is available for the period 2014-2015 is 13 billion euro. That is about $16 billion for 7 years. And there's been a small change in the governance of ERC, because now the president, myself for the moment, really is residing in Brussels and actually accumulates 2 functions which previously were the function of a Secretary General and the function of the chair of the Scientific Council. So this is the budget for the past years. You see it has been growing from nothing in almost nothing in 2007 to what it is now, which is about 1.7 billion euro. That is over $2 billion per year. And it will grow up to 2020, where it will be about almost $3 billion per year. So, of course, there are 3 mutually reinforcing priorities in the Horizon 2020. Very quickly, excellent science, and it includes ERC, industrial leadership and societal challenges. And why has been this pillar, excellent science, taken? Well, the ambition is really to have world-class science as one of the foundations of competitiveness for Europe. And Europe needs to develop, attract, and retain research talent. European researchers need access to the best infrastructures, and of course, definitely this pillar is there to help them for that. And so the excellent science pillar, which I just mentioned, contains several elements. ERC is the critical one with 13 billion. There is another one called Future and Emerging Technologies, in which mathematicians could actually submit projects. And the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions that maybe some of you have heard about, which have really to do with mobility of researchers. It's really an individual grant that you can look for and get to go to Europe or to come or to get out of Europe or to move within Europe. And actually there is also another component in the excellent science pillar, which is the research infrastructures. So ERC in mathematics, you see there has been 137 starting grants given so far. This is how many there were per year. So you see it's quite competitive. These are the advanced grants, 102 altogether since the beginning of ERC. So of course the people who got the grant in 2008, they already finished their grant more or less. But the people who got it in 2010, they of course are not yet finished. And this is the repetition in terms of countries for the, as I said, 239 projects in mathematics. So you see the repartition is not exactly balanced, and in particular, well, it depends of course on the size of the countries. You see, for example, Switzerland, which has, is not such a big country, which is one of the associated countries, For the moment, in Horizon 2020, Switzerland is out. Hopefully it will be back soon, but it is not yet back. So anyway, this is the way ERC is supporting mathematics at the moment. So the key point is that we need to develop links with non-EU funding agencies, as I expressed. The typical scheme is the one I described for Korea, namely giving opportunity for ERC grantees to attract in their teams researchers which are supported by foreign agencies for 6 to 12 months. And typically the foreign agency would cover the travel cost. As I said, 2 agreements have been signed with the American NSF, one with the Korean National Research Foundation, and we are working on some of the new ones. And so I don't want to give too much detail, but typically for Korea, the agreement is open to people who already have received a career researcher grant from NRF, or also the ones who have received from the Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning, the so-called labeled young researchers. And typically NRF will cover not only the travel expenses, but also the local expenses in Europe, which was the decision of NRF, because that's the way they are functioning. And already, as I mentioned, 34 researchers will be coming for 2014. And actually, the very good news, I think, for Korea probably, is the fact that we got from ERC grantees, as I mentioned, there are 4,500 of them, 454 requests for Korean scientists very explicitly nominated to come and take part in the visit. So hopefully, we hope that the 34 this year will grow to more people. So now I give the floor to Luiz.
Good afternoon. My name is Luiz de Santos. I work at the ERC as a scientific officer. I'm going to continue the presentation after this quite a comprehensive overview that Professor Bourguignon gave. I'm going to focus more, for example, in the application process and the evaluation process, and give a little bit more details for those willing to apply for the ERC grants. Okay. What I have here would be, for example, what are the funding schemes and the opportunities that are available, in fact, for top research from all over the world. Professor Bourguignon already showed this slide. These are the 4 basic schemes that we have, that we could apply. They are divided in some way by the maturity or the, let's say, the stream or the career stage at which the researcher would be at the present moment. And these are done in such a way to have comparable, let's say, career stage or situation among the applicants. We have done the starting grants, so it will be for research, for example, with a lapse of 2 to 7 years after their first PhD. We have another scheme, which is the consolidated grant for those which will be between the 7 and 12. And then we have the advanced grant, which will be not necessarily following these streams, or not necessarily being after 12 years, but those who are already really established as independent leader researchers. And we have the proof of concept, which are in some way awarded for ERC grantees already. Basically, the constitution of the whole scenario situation of a ERC grant is that we have a single principal investigator, which will be, as mentioned here, as an individual scientist, assisted by his or her research team. This scientist, the principal investigator, can be a scientific investigator of any age, any nationality, as long as it fulfills those eligibility criteria for the schema that this person will be fit for, and have an excellent profile. That means because these grants are increasingly becoming more and more competitive, they are already, and we really recommend that researchers really go through and really see if they're really ready for the moment, for the application. That means that the profile is really a competitive profile in terms of the track record in terms of achievements and also in terms of, let's say, the visibility that this research has in the community. And his or her research team that this investigator will form around and will also, for which the person will also receive the fund, can be constituted of researchers which are chosen by the principal investigator. They are not mandated by organization, of course, but not also not by the host institution, and can be individuals, again, of any nationality. If the scientific added value is proven, they can be from even under organization or residing in another country. And the grant will cover the salary of these team members as well. The research project itself, we say that we are not, let's say, dictating what will be thematic priorities. For example, per call that will say this is the areas that will be prioritized. No, this does not exist. It's really researcher-driven. It's bottom-up. We accept proposals from all of the fields in all of disciplinary domains. And we expect projects that could be up to 5 years of research work. The host institution by itself is the legal entity that will be hosting the principal investigator and his or her team. It has to be under the condition of eligibility, an institution legally established in the EU or any Horizon 2020 associated country. It can be one institution, private or public institution, and could be, for example, a university, a laboratory, or a research center. And the other things that we emphasize that although this explanation given in terms of the host institutions is the PI responsibility to choose the best place where he or she is going to develop his work. The host institution is not part of the evaluation criteria. The host institution is not evaluated. That means we are not, let's say, taking consideration the fame or the country or what else is associated to a particular host institution. We trust that the PI is the best person, the most capable person to choose the best place to implement his or her work. And in any case, the grants are portable, as Professor Bourguignon mentioned before. The PI, if the need appears, if there is a scientific justification for that, the PI can transfer the grant to another host institution. I listed here some features which are of interest, in particular for those who are not a national from a EU country or one of those associated countries, in the sense that there is also additional fund that can be requested for the establishment of this research in Europe. That's what we call additional startup funding. And this varies according to the granting scheme. We also offer the possibility that the grantee keep affiliation in the case, for example, that you are affiliated, you are a professor at the university here in your country of origin, you want to keep it this is also possible. You don't need necessarily to transfer it to the host institution. The team members can still be from outside the EU, could be placed outside the EU. And the host institution itself, they are more and more offering some kind of support or advantage for those who express the wish to be there, to develop their work there, in case they are successful in the application for a ERC grant. That means you should explore your contacts in the sense that try to really to get in contact with those who have in other institutions, or if you have already experience in some institutions in Europe, see, to get the commitment that they will host you in case you are awarded. And for that, there are services like I mentioned here, this access, but also your national contact points can give you much more detailed information or give support in the application. Korea, for instance, has 2 national contact points. We have even the presence of one representative here, and I would advise you really to get in contact with those institutions. For the evaluation process, it's fully peer review process. So we have panels which are constituted of high-level scientists which are gathered from all over the Europe, but also, I would say, all over the world. We have presently in the panels around 40% of experts coming from outside Europe. That means it's not necessarily a must, but we are really trying to get the best of the best to support us in the evaluation. And each panel is constituted of a panel chair plus 12 or 15 panel members. And these are supported according to the need of expertise, additional remote referees or additional what we call external reviewers that may support them in case particular expertise is needed for certain proposals. These are the panels. And you as a panel investigator, when you are writing your proposal, finishing writing, when you are going to submit, you really have to choose one of these panels, because for each of them, there will be, as I said, these constitutions of panel members who are specialized in your area, in your field. Then you have to be careful in choosing the right panel to which you are going to submit. Of course, you can also indicate, we'll give you this possibility, a second panel, and then we can see afterwards if this is necessary, a kind of cross-panel review. But think carefully and analyze carefully what would be the best panel for you to submit. The quality of the research proposal. You have to bear in mind that excellence is the sole criteria. As I mentioned before, host institution is not evaluated. What I'm emphasizing here is really excellence of the project, and this includes also the principal investigator himself or herself on that. This is the must, the primer, in fact, the sole criteria that we have. And the quality of the project proposal itself, we are going to see if what's the groundbreaking nature that you are of your ideas, the important challenge that you are posing or you are facing to abate. What are the novel concepts, the methodology, the feasibility of your work. And for when you present yourself, the principal investigator, we are going to see as well your track record, your ability really to propose and conduct really groundbreaking research. We are going to see, for example, your commitment to the project, and for that there are certain rules that for each schema there is a minimum of your working time which has to be dedicated to the project. And in the process, we try to let's say, to improve year after year, but as it is, it's a single evaluation submission. You have followed by 2-step evaluation, and in this single submission, it means that you have to select, as I mentioned before, your panel, and you have to provide information in 2 parts. One concerns the administrative, where you give basic information about resource, budget, but also the host institution, and another part where you have your scientific content. And this is divided in a synopsis, which is evaluated in a first step, and then the full proposal is in a second step in case your proposal is retained. For 2 of those schemes, starting grant consolidators, we also have interviews in case for the proposal which are selected for the second round. Here's just the picture of this process. As I mentioned, we have in the step one a very, let's say, first screening of the proposal, in the sense that you're going to evaluate your synopsis. And for those that are retained, we go then for a second step where, probably you might remember the term, external reviews, where we invite additional experts with support to analyze even more deeply your proposals. And for those who pass all this, then we are going to see if the funding, for how much funding we have, so that we can fund as much as possible, how many proposals possible we can. The applicant profile. This, as I said, you have to make a self-analysis to see if are you competitive enough, are you really, even if you are eligible in this window of application, but do I have this potential as a researcher independence? That means, and this you can prove, for example, as showing significant publication that you have without necessarily the participation of a PhD supervisor, for example, for the case of starting grants. And you have evidence of scientific maturity in the sense that you have recognition, you have given, you have been invited for conferences and so on as speakers. You have publications in renewed or peer-reviewed journals and so on. That means that you really try to make a self-analysis first to see if you're ready for application. And in terms of promising track record of achievements, for example, we give here examples that of things that how you can demonstrate that you have that. For example, significant publications, a kind of, let's say, if applicable, patents or price that you might have in your track record. And for the advanced grants, of course, the competitions start to get more tough, and what is required to be demonstrated is a level of both experience and achievement much higher, and really have to demonstrate a really sound, excellent track record, record of international recognition, that are internationally recognized, and scientific publications which are really relevant to the community of your research field and career stage. And this slide I included, I made really, let's say, as a kind of highlight, call the attention, in the sense that the ERC grants are really competitive, are becoming even more, the number of applications are growing much faster than the budget available. That means since 2009, the Scientific Council has started to apply some kind of restrictions on applications in order to keep or maintain the quality and integrity of the evaluation process. And for example, as it is at the moment, some proposals which are evaluated at a lower rank or lower range, for example, they might be subject to a restriction in the sense that the principal investigator will not be allowed to reapply in the next 2 years. We have to wait to improve the proposal and come back just after 2 years after that submission. That's again another reason for really for you to make the self-analysis. Am I competitive? Am I ready? Is my research idea really innovative? Is really groundbreaking? Is really at the level as it should be? And the host institution, well, I go through very quickly, but because Professor Bourguignon has already introduced it, they are the legal entity that hosts, that employ the principal investigator. They have as well some, let's say, financial advantage of hosting you. They have certain costs, indirect costs that are paid by the grant. And of course, they have you there at the institution, which gives as well a good visibility for the institution in name. And, but they have to have commitments in the sense that they guarantee the independence of you as a researcher. You should be allowed to publish as you want, to include as authors those who really contributed to the project, and to give you access to facilities and laboratories as needed. The publication, we have one call per each scheme per year, and the publication date for the first calls of 2015 are planned for autumn 2014, around October. I have a table afterwards about that. And the restrictions for submission that I mentioned before might change. That means keep an eye on the documentations to see if there were any changes. Here's the table. Just we see that for starting grantees, we have now in October 2004 the call publication. It means you can start already prepare the proposal and also contact with host institutions. And these are a kind of summary, some message that I would advise you to take home, is that these grants are really competitive. It's a kind of label of excellence that you have in your career. And you should be really looking for achieving success and in something that's really high risk, high gain, and it's really breakthrough. And as mentioned before, the open calls, but we still have one now for 2014 for the advanced grants. And I'd like then to thank for your attention. And we have now a session where we invited 3 of our grantees to give their testimonies in the sense of how was for them the whole process of application, what means for them having these grants. And I'd like then to invite our 2 grantees to present. More information you might find in our websites. And in terms of personnel, these are Anton Alexiev, and we have also Ben Green on the table who are going to give their testimonies.
Okay, well, I'll keep this relatively brief, and I'd be very happy to answer questions. So my name is Ben Green, and I hold an ERC starting grant, which I applied for in 2010. So it's run for 3 years now. I was awarded it in 2011. And the title of my grant is Approximate Algebraic Structure, which is the same as the talk I gave this morning. I don't know if anybody was there. I wanted to emphasize a couple of things about my grant to add to what has been said already. I have employed 3 postdocs on it, and 2 of those are from outside of the EU. So one is from Argentina, actually, and another one is American. The problem I have with my postdocs is that they're too good, and the one from Argentina just got a Clay Research Award, so now I have to find a new postdoc. But that's a good problem to have, I'd say. The other thing I wanted to say is that when I applied for my grant, I was at Cambridge University, and now I've moved to Oxford. So I'm in a position to comment on how easy it is to move a grant between universities. So I think that's all I need to say for now. But as I said, if anybody has any questions about the starting grants, I'd be very happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Well, let me continue. My name is Anton Alexiev. I'm at the University of Geneva, and I have an ERC Advanced Grant, which started in February this year. So at the moment, I can probably give you comments or testimonies on a little bit on the application procedure and on the initial stage on how my research group is set up and things like that. So it's probably too early to speak about like whatever results or how efficient it was on the whole. So maybe like a couple of words on the application procedure. Of course, well, probably none of us likes that much writing applications, but of course it's a necessary part of the game. And here there is, for ERC, there is a certain difference with the standard application procedures as I saw them with local agencies in Switzerland and before that in Sweden. Well, the ERC grants are long-term grants for 5 years, and also as it was emphasized before, they are supposed to be a high risk, high gain. So this shifts a little bit the perspective on how one writes such an application. And well, I think to me it was interesting and in some way rewarding, even though of course one spends some time and effort, but thinking of long-term goals and high risk, high gain, which means more ambitious goals than you usually put in the grant. At least to me it was interesting to write such an application because in some way it probably influenced a little bit my research perspective or my research direction. I'm thinking now about those high risk, high gain problems, and also like kind of I think, well, there are realistic chances maybe I actually solve some of them. While for kind of standard grant applications, when you write things which are like 100% or maybe 80% realistic, well, they are less ambitious. So this part I found really very nice. Now, well, about the research group, obviously an ERC grant gives a possibility to have a bigger research group. And I was, at least now in the beginning, I was lucky because there were several excellent applicants, and then I could hire quite a diverse group. So I have 3 PhD students, 1 Chinese, 1 French, and 1 local from Switzerland, and I have 1 French postdoc. So it turned out that there were very good applicants. And perhaps an important point, so the home institution signs some kind of agreement which guarantees the independence of your work. Well, it may sound a little bit abstract, but in my case it was not quite abstract because I have a senior collaborator who is very essential for my research group, and there is a local rule which doesn't allow to people to stay for a long time on temporary positions. Well, which is probably a reasonable rule, but for my group I do need this person, and with the help of the ERC grant I was able to negotiate it because the agreement stipulates that we should be able to hire people that we need. We should be able to run our groups in the way which is most suitable for the success of the project. And in this case, we were able to overrule the local rules and to have it in the most efficient way for research, which I find very positive. Well, I think that's about it for what I can say at the moment, and I would be very happy to answer questions if any.
Thank you to Anton Alexeyev and to Ben Green for their testimonies. So now I just leave the floor for a few minutes to Arthur Avila, who just finished signing many things. So Arthur?
Yes. So I was asked just to describe how was the process for me. My director of the labs told me to apply, and then we did it a few days before the deadline, maybe 2 days, and he sat with me, and then we just shows, well, we tried to make a coherent proposal. Since I work on different things, I selected 2 teams that could go on under the same umbrella, and soon after it started, I realized I should kind of be more inclusive in my list. one issue is that this is a kind of traditional proposal that I don't know if it works for all kinds of ways people do research in math. Like I find it very hard to kind of forecast, especially on over 5 years, how things will evolve, like which kind of problems you're going to still be working on, and maybe you'll be interested in something completely different that you have discovered just randomly. So the way it's structured that maybe is under a common system that includes other areas that work different. Maybe I'm sure that for biology you have projects that really have some kind of several steps that must be done, and then you can clearly forecast some kind of program for 5 years. In math, I find it very hard to tell what I'm going to be doing in a few years exactly. So it's a little bit, the content of a research project is a little bit of fiction in that sense. Like you try to, I made some good guesses, but the guesses were mostly concentrated on things that I was too sure about to be really, like, it was not what I was anticipating that would happen, because the interesting things I would not be anticipating. So anyway, I tried to include some things that I was pretty sure that were going to happen because it was already pretty advanced. I think that's kind of standard in math, but I don't think it should be necessary to go through this kind of fiction writing just to get into the same system as the biologists and the others. Okay, so that's how it was. So I wrote something that was pretty consistent because there was many problems that I was working on that I believed in. I made some guess, some of them worked better than I expected, so it also went there. I ended up limiting the scope of the project too much because I couldn't anticipate what would be going on. So okay, so that was the part of applying, and then there was I was called for the next round where I gave, I don't know, a presentation. This also was not very complicated. I do not think it's very much based on the presentation, so you kind of try to show that you really know what you're talking about. Okay, so then I got the grant, and then the problem started because I think that the ERC is possibly is not very bureaucratic compared to France, but the interaction between the ERC and the CNRS system was kind of joining to bureaucracy, so it was more bureaucratic than either of them at the same time. I first realized that something was kind of more complicated when the Brussels guy finally discovered that I didn't have a right to work in France at that moment, which the CNRS never noticed. I had gone over my carte de séjour but it was caught by the Brussels guys, and then I got a carte de séjour. It's probably useful, which now I have a passport, so that's no longer a problem. This was fine, so that certainly, I was surprised that the CNRS never caught before, but I went on to do, so the main issue that happens in the interaction between the ERC and the CNRS is that ERC actually puts everything goes according to the rules of the Rome institution. So this makes first some kind of inequality between ERC grantees in different countries. So a guy that gets an ERC grant in Switzerland will have a completely different experience than someone that gets an ERC grant in France. For instance, on how you can spend the money. Right? I think it's much more flexible in some countries, and you are allowed to kind of, when trying to, especially to invite some senior researcher. I understand that the ERC grant gives you a lot of flexibility in many countries, but the CNRS system blocks because we don't have much money. It has to be attached maybe to the salary system in France that's kind of lower than in other places. So in the end, what you can offer a visiting professor is completely different if you are getting in France or you are getting in Switzerland. I think it should be a little bit more uniform, right? Because you're doing the same kind of research. It's just that it's an opportunity to get someone that, especially if it's a senior researcher, you want to offer some salary that's comparable or kind of expense that's comparable to what they get at their home institution. So, there was this issue, but this is very fixed in France, I believe. That was particularly thorny issue. There is this thing of writing. You have to tell in CNRS. You have to say every month what you have been proving and how many days you spent proving, which is kind of very strange way to present what you've been working, because you can also not have proven not to work it too much, because if you work it more than 35 hours a week, then you'll get everybody in trouble. So you have to invent some random amount of working that you have done, and that's how it works. In the end, it's perfectly fine. There is these things, but this doesn't affect in practice. So the actual practice is very good. You get the money that in math is basically going to be used. You don't need much material, so I basically use it for hiring postdocs, and that was my intention from the beginning. I knew that there were some good people that were coming and that would be interested in visiting France. Some others were I learned after, and they had the opportunity to work with them. And it was very good that we had a completely, the point of view of hiring, it was completely non-bureaucratic. It's just you decide, and then you get your postdoc, which is kind of remarkable. Just I need to decide at a given point, and it was very helpful. It got some people to do math in France and work closely to me. For particularly one of the projects that I was just hoping that maybe I'd be able to do, but I was not very sure, and so on. We got some good idea, and I was very happy that I was with that postdoc. That was the paper with Vincent Delecroix. It was a project for many years that I wanted to do, and I had no idea that during 5 years there would be an advance. The fact that he was there at that moment was extremely helpful, and he was there because they had this grant. We wouldn't be able to, he would probably have to go to another country or something else if there was not this kind of opportunities in France. Right now, it's a problem in France that there's a tendency to replace the permanent positions by that given early on in the career, well, getting more closer to the American system by those kind of postdoctoral positions, which are kind of a little bit shorter usually. So because in the US sometimes you have a longer postdoc, in France I was seeing kind of pretty short ones. So it's just very good to have this right now at this time. In France we have especially a small amount of positions at this moment. So in the end I was very happy to be able to help my friends and also help myself, because I was doing better math because of that with those grants.
Okay, thank you very much for these testimonies. Are there some brief questions while the file for the next presentation is being prepared? Is that the proper wording? Are there questions, in particular for the grantees who are here? No questions? It's difficult to, do you see them?
Okay, so I have two questions actually. So first of all, you had these time limits for each of these grantees. So for starting grant, for instance, it was from 2 to 7 years after your PhD. How strict are these? For instance, I spent some time outside academia after my PhD, so I'm wondering, is it still possible to apply these programs even after 7 years? And the second question is that, how is the evaluation process going on? I mean, well, for instance, if you want to change the topics you are studying, I mean, I have a track record on doing something, but then if I want to study something else in the future, but of course I don't have so much track record on doing that, is that the problem when applying the fund?
So it's very difficult to understand because of reverberation. So the first question had to do with how you count the years after a PhD. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, in the starting grant, you said that it's meant for people who have 2 to 7 years experience after PhD. So is that how strict? Or if I have 8 years, does it mean that I cannot apply?
It is absolutely strict. The only change which is implemented is the fact that women who have children actually get an extension of this period by 18 months per child. So if 2 children, then 3 years and so on. And for men, this extension can also be taken into account if a man has also obtained a leave of absence to take care of the children. So then what is counted is exactly the leave of absence, up to 18 months.
Okay, so in particular, if I had my PhD very young, and I spent like, let's say 3 or 4 years outside academia, but I'm still below 30 years old, I cannot apply if the 7 years has passed.
I'm sorry, it's very difficult for us to understand because of the
Echo,
we have echoes, so it's difficult to.
No, sorry, the same, I didn't understand, but probably if I repeat, it's really strict, this window. It has to be from 2 to 7 years after the award of your first PhD. If you are beyond that, then you have to choose the next grant scheme. If it's more than 7 years, you have then to choose the consolidated grant. And, but as Professor Bourguignon just mentioned, there are some kind of relaxation in this period if you have special conditions as maternity leave, paternity leave, or military service, and so on. But it's really strict.
I'm sorry for the second question, I couldn't understand because of the echo. So.
Okay, so my second question was about changing the topic of the field. So if I have a track record doing, let's say, PDEs, but I want to do geometry in the future, so how should I, or let's say geometrical PDEs,
No, I think your
is
track
the
record,
evaluation?
no, the key point is that your track record should be as a mathematician. The panel of mathematics contains both people with different specialities in mathematics. So what they are going to look at is the fact that, in a sense, you show some evidence. If you claim to do mathematics, then you are able to do mathematics. But mathematics is considered as a whole. So you're certainly allowed to change your subfield. But of course, the level of your publication or your work has to be high enough that people have the feeling that you will continue to do high-level work even if you change your field.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry for asking you to repeat, but that was difficult. Are there more questions? So I want to, okay, there is one here. Take the microphone because we can't hear you.
You need it? Okay. You mentioned that the grants are available to people from the EU and the associated states, or whatever term was used. Can you list what are those associated states?
Yes. Well, in fact, I would have in the presentation, if it's possible to load, but basically other European countries, but there are also countries from outside, let's say, the European area. If it's possible to upload the presentation again, please. I have the list. But the list, anyway, you find in the work program.
On the website.
Yeah, or on the website. Sorry, if you can speed up now. But there is a list of nearly, let's say, 10 or 14 countries which are the so-called associated to the Horizon 2020. And these are available at the website and the work program.
I think we need to close now. Thank you so much for this part, of course, we have the second part with the Korean component. I want to thank all the people, the organizers here to have given this opportunity, and in particular the grantees who have agreed on spending some time. If you want to get more information, you can always try to talk to one of us. There is also another person who is here, who is sitting in the front row, Carla Palmieri, who is very often at the booth of the ERC. And there is also another member of the Scientific Council, who is Pavel Exner, who is sitting also in the front row, has been one of the members of the Scientific Council from the first day. So he knows everything much more than I do, since I was chair of a panel to start with, but then I was away from ERC and then I'm back, in a sense. Thank you so much, and I hope this was useful, and you can always get information on the website. So thank you to all people who contributed.
Good afternoon. Distinguished scholars and attendants from all over the world. I was so surprised that the total number of registration is over 5,000, which is one of the largest international conference that I ever attended. So congratulations for all organizing committee members, and I deeply appreciate for inviting me to have a chance to introduce National Research Foundation. Well, I'd like to introduce current status of R&D in Korea, and followed by an introduction to R&D programs of National Research Foundation. Well, this slide shows status of R&D investment in Korea. The R&D investment in Korea has been continuously expanded in recent 10 years. The total R&D investment in 2012 was $54 billion. The investment from the government sector was $13.5 billion, which is about 1/4 of the total investment. And the investment from private sector was $40 billion, which is about 3/4 of the total investment. The ratio of total investment of R&D to GDP became 4.36% in Korea, which is the highest compared to the other major countries. The government is planning to increase the ratio of R&D investment up to 5% by the year of 2017. Well, this is the government R&D budget in this year, 2014, which is $17 billion. The total R&D budget, including the private sector, is almost $70 billion. This slide shows the status of budget funded by each ministry or organization of government. Major funding organizations are MSIP, which is Ministry of Science, ICT, and Future Planning, and MOTIE, which is Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy. And the third one is DARPA, Defense Acquisition Program Administration. And the fourth is MOE, which is Ministry of Education. The competitiveness on science and technology is evaluated every year by IMD, which is Institute Management Development, located in Switzerland. The science competitiveness of Korea has been located quite stable position between the number 3rd or number 6 in the world. Technology competitiveness of Korea is slowly increasing from 18th to 8th in recent 5 years since 2010. There are strong and weak points of Korea's R&D status. The strong points are total R&D expenditure compared to GDP, which is the highest in the world, and large number of R&D personnel, which is around 6 in the world. However, the weak points are the attraction as researchers and intellectual property right protection is quite low. World top level technology from R&D lead Korea's economic growth. However, the current technology Sorry about this. However, the current technology rapidly catching up by other developing countries. And the number of world #1 export items are decreasing, and their market shares are shrinking in recent years. So the economic situation of Korea shows that the capita income has been trapped within 20 to 30,000 US$ during the last 7 years. It is required to propose a paradigm shift in R&D strategy. In the past, as a fast follower, the efficiency was an important issue based on hardworking with cost-oriented strategy, emphasizing applied research. However, in the future, to be a first mover, the innovation will be an important issue based on creativity with value-oriented strategy, emphasizing basic research. Well, National Research Foundation is responsible for the basic research funded mostly from Ministry of Science and Ministry of Education. The role of NRF is becoming more important to enhance the competitiveness of science and technology. Let me introduce briefly the role and the R&D programs of National Research Foundation. COSEP, which is the Korea Science Engineering Foundation, was founded in 1977, managed research funding primarily for natural science and engineering. KRF, Korea Research Foundation, was founded in 1981. They support researches in humanities, social sciences, as well as natural science and engineering. KICOS, founded in 2004, mainly support international collaboration on science and technology. These three organizations were merged into National Research Foundation in 2009. The National Research Foundation supports R&D in all academic disciplines, from natural science and engineering to humanities and social sciences. National Research Foundation has 2 offices in Korea. The main office is located in Daedok Science Town at Daejeon, located geometrically central part of Korea. It is located along with many other research institutes related to the science and technology. There are 4 universities, more than 50 government-funded research institutes, and over 1,000 private research institutes in Daedok Science Town area. The other NRF office is located in Seoul, the capital city of Korea. The Seoul office is a center for international collaboration. The mission of NRF is to promote creative researches and to foster experienced researchers. The core values of NRF are new challenge, responsibility to society, and faithfulness to researchers. The vision of NRF is to become a global leading research supporting organization. Now, I will briefly explain the organization of NRF. There are 3 major directorates in NRF, that is Directorate for Basic Research and Directorate for Humanity and Social Science and Directorate for National Science and Engineering. Directorate for Academic Promotion mainly supports academic activities of university and college. The total number of employees of NRF is about 500. And there are 21 program managers as contract outside experts from university and research institute. The total budget of NRF is about 3.6 billion US dollar this year. The largest portion of the budget, about 1 billion US dollar, is being funded for the basic research. And about 560 million US dollar are invested for university education capacity enhancement. International collaboration in science and technology accounts for about 2.5% of the total budget. The outline of basic research program is shown in this slide. The slide is a little bit complicated, but the basic research program consists of 3 different categories that are individual research program and group research program and research infrastructure programs. Individual research program include young researcher program, mid-career research program, and reading research program based on the experience of researchers. Group research program include global research lab program and basic research program and advanced research center program based on the grouping of participating researchers. Research infrastructure program include programs for research information, infrastructure for international collaboration, and large equipment operation engineers program. And this includes more detail of basic research program. For example, young research program funds about 50,000 US dollar per year up to 3 years. Advanced Research Center program funds several different types of research centers up to 2 million US dollar up to 7 years. The National Science and Engineering Program funds 3 technological areas, which are the future technology, nuclear energy and safety, and big sciences. Future technology area include bio, nano, IC technologies, and their converging areas. Nuclear energy and safety area include nuclear energy development, radiation technology, and nuclear energy research infrastructure. Big science area include aerospace technology, space launch vehicle, and nucleation fusion and accelerate programs. The overseas network and partnerships are illustrated in this slide. Some of you can see the name of your institute in the slides, even though the character letter is too small to understand that. But the NRF currently has signed MOU with 67 agencies in 42 foreign countries. Based on the MOU with this institute, National Research Foundation launches joint calls for funding with several countries, and we hope to strengthen, expand international collaborations. Well, let me introduce some of our international collaborative programs supported by National Research Foundation. And this is the Global Research Lab program, which is to fund for collaborative research projects between Korean and foreign researchers in order to secure overseas technology through international collaboration. The funding amount is about 500K US dollar, up to 6 years. And NRF and Swedish Science Foundation recently agreed to fund Korea-Sweden collaborative research program on 9 basic scientific areas, such as bioimaging, bioinformatics, nanomaterials, electronics, photonics, and so on. The grant size is to be $100,000 per year, up to 6 years. This program is on call for proposal and is expected to make agreement to start collaborative projects in later part of this year. National Research Foundation is funding for Korea and EU research exchange and collaborative program, as already ERC presented during their presentations. This program is to support the visiting of Korean researchers to university or institute in European countries in order to encourage international collaboration. The grant is about 30,000 US dollar for 1 year, which is for the researchers can visit counterpart research group in EU countries. And the visiting term can be from 1 month to several months. And National Research Foundation started this program this year and is to be expanded in the future. And National Research Foundation in Korea and NSF in United States are planning an international collaboration program in a field of advanced manufacturing. Both US and Korea have interest for collaborating basic research on a new technology related to the advanced manufacturing areas, such as additive manufacturing, nano manufacturing, smart manufacturing, and industrial robotics. We have a joint meeting together in last week for discussing collaboration area and topics. I'd like to conclude my talk with an introduction of historical discoveries related to the mathematics in Korea. In the long history of Korea, mathematics always had been lead new technologies. There are several examples here. The Cheomseongdae, which is located in Gyeongju, an old capital city of Silla dynasty, which is known as the oldest observatory for stars. And the Cheomseongdae shows extraordinarily accurate geometrical positioning of large stone constructions built in 647 year to observe the stars. And also the sundial and clepsydra developed in 1434 and rain gauge developed in 1442 are all based on strong mathematical background of Korea. Korea is proud of an outstanding mathematician, Mr. Choi Seok-jung, who had born in 1646 in Joseon dynasty. He is recognized by an historical achievement, devising orthogonal Latin squares about 50 years earlier than Euler. This is cited in Handbook of Computational Designs, edited by Corbon and Dinitz in 2007. Well, thank you very much. I'd like to conclude my talk here. Thank you again for your attention. Thank you very much.
have any question? Professor Hong is ready to entertain you with some answers. Okay, so if not the case, this is end of the session. I'd like to thank all presenters from European Research Council and National Research Foundation of Korea for their excellent presentations and testimonies. Okay. Thanks so much.